from a marketing perspective, focus on the things that you think are going to wind up getting you the best return on investment. And if social media is one of those things, you've got to commit to going all in on the social media. I would not commit to going all in on blogging because, again, I think it's on life support. What we need to do is think about blogging from a different perspective. If you're going to start a blog, think bigger. Think about the other platforms that are out there and think about the attention economy that we are in right now.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Doorify Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Fagioli, with yet another old buddy from times gone by, Kelley Skar from Canada. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you are one of those amazing humans who has survived in the real estate industry for decades and now spends, a big hunk of your time helping other agents and brokers succeed. And we are going through a series of conversations this fall on the Doorify Real Estate Podcast with people just like you to try to get everybody the best advice and, the best shot at launching into 2025 with a bang. And so I can't wait to share with everybody. But before we dig into that, can you just give everybody a little bit of background on who Kelley is and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So almost decades, dude, I just started my 18th year. So it's almost, I'm like 2 years away from decades, plural. But yeah, no, it's been a trip, man. It's been a long time. I got licensed in 2007, August, part-time agent, went full-time in April of 2008. My wife was 4 months pregnant with our twins. I was getting laid off from my full-time 6-figure a year job anyways, and I knew it. So I went home one day and said, hey, I think this real estate thing can work out for us. She's like, you better make it work. So I did. Here I am 18 years later. I went transitioned from a solo agent, built a team, merged that team with a boutique brokerage in Calgary. We grew that brokerage from 9 to 115 agents in about 18 months. I transitioned out of that company, just focused on being a solo agent again and, from the coaching side of things, and made a big move from one province to another, from Alberta to British Columbia, which is actually the province that I grew up in. A lot of things changed though, got married, had kids, made the move with the family, and kids transitioned really, really nicely. And we've been here in Kelowna, BC since 2021, where I've been primarily focused on building my coaching business.
Okay, cool. Man, that's a lot of changing zones. It must have been interesting from, you hear about agents moving from one market to another, but that's a pretty dramatic change. Did you, in every one of those changes, did you have to just sort of reinvent who you were in the real estate space?
Yeah. So I left British Columbia. I grew up in this small town called Prince George. I wasn't an agent then. I left in 1998. I moved to Edmonton, Alberta, home of the Oilers, Wayne Gretzky. And so moved there. I spent 5 years in Edmonton. I usually tell a little joke how I say I did 5 years in Edmonton. And if you've ever been to Edmonton, then you would know what I'm talking about. So I left Edmonton. I moved to Calgary in 2003, got my real estate license, like I said, in 2007, and then wound up, making a move in 2021, like kind of right at the height of, everything that was going on in the world at the time. And yeah, man, it was a total reinvention of like just getting right back to basics, and everything that I had done right at the very beginning of my career became came full circle. And it was like everything that I knew, I just put into practice. So one of the first things that I did was I started a YouTube channel. Like, what better way to get ingratiated into the community than by actually creating content for that community? And I knew that it worked. There was this one thing that happened. It was wild. So we're here. It's about 2022. We moved in July of 2021. It's 2022. We had met some people and really good friends to this day. There's a big group of us now. And we go over to these people's house, and we walk in the front door and meet the wife, and my wife and the wife, her friend, they'd already met. They'd been kind of hanging out together. The husband comes over, we get introduced, and he's looking at me and he says, I know you. I'm like, no, I don't think you do, man. We've never met before. I would remember you. Like, there's no way that we've met before. I don't think so. He goes, no, I know you. We've met before. And he thought about it and thought about it. It took about 5 or 6 minutes. And finally he goes, YouTube. I go, yeah, I got a YouTube channel. He goes, I watch your show every week. I'm like, oh, awesome. So you're the one. Right. So when that happened, I looked at my wife and I'm like, see, I keep telling you these things about social media, right? Like I remember back in 2011, remember the good old days of Twitter, like back in '07, '06 when we all jumped on there. I remember sitting on the couch. It was like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Everybody was in bed, and I'm cramming to get the last licensing course done because it was like the deadline was the next day. And so I've got the TV on, I've got my laptop, I've got my iPad, I'm tweeting, I'm listening, I'm watching, and I'm watching this movie called Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise, Penelope Cruz, and Cameron Diaz. And so I had tweeted out, Tom Cruise is one lucky SOB. He gets to play making love to Cameron Diaz and Penelope Cruz in the same movie. And so thought nothing of it, whatever. I'm watching this movie. I wake up in the morning and I got this follow notification on Twitter that Tom Cruise is now following me on Twitter, and actually replied back. And it's funny because my wife and I were in this conversation about social media. You spend too much time on your phone. You're always looking at your phone. You're always on Twitter, yada, yada, yada. And so I got up in the morning and I'm like, so you still think this social media thing is a waste of time? I showed her I'm like, what do you think about them apples? And there was Tom Cruise following me on Twitter. And it's kind of a cool story, but social media has just grown over the course of the last, 15, 18 years. It's just wild. It's how it's progressed.
Yeah, it's, for those of us that were there, and that I remember I was really sad that I couldn't get at Matt, because of course one of the founders named Matt, but I was that close to the beginning, like days after launch joining, and I was like, no, unfortunately there's already a Matt. But yeah, I mean, the world obviously has shifted in some dramatic ways. Well, when you're doing your coaching for agents, how much is social media a factor? I'm guessing a lot.
Oh, it's big, man. It is absolutely big. I coach around YouTube. If I got a coaching client that wants to dive into, how to actually build out a channel, we can go real deep with that. I'm really bullish on Instagram right now. I think Instagram is a gold mine, not just for, people selling services like, coaching and training and that sort of thing, but definitely for real estate agents as well. I think a lot of agents are not using it properly. A lot of brokers aren't using it properly. Like I've had this conversation with multiple brokers over the last, 6 months or so. And I keep telling them, like, stop posting your listings on your Instagram feed. Like that's what the MLS is for, right? Dude, reach out to other agents in your community by creating content that their broker is not creating. Like that's the hook. Be their broker before you're their broker. Like this whole ideology, right? Most brokers are not utilizing Instagram in the way that it was designed. They're just, continually with this push marketing directive instead of like the pull marketing where I'm going to create content. I'm going to pull people into my web. And once they're there, then I'm going to start a conversation with them. And that's how we built a company from 9 to 115 agents. And just over 18 months, we followed the whole Gary V ideology of creating a media company. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how we did that. It's how we grew that business and scaled it as quickly as we possibly did.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Instagram's my favorite platform now. I wouldn't have said that maybe even 3 years ago. And I think that for me, and I think it's probably true of a lot of people, there's just like this huge curve of understanding what that platform is and how it's different. Just like, I guess that's true on every other platform. Like I'm not as much of a Twitter guy anymore. I'm there a little bit, but there's a totally different language, totally different conversation happening there. And for some reason, Instagram connects with me. And I think one of the things that I love talking to agents about now is to go, look, if you're starting a new year and you really haven't won in any particular meaningful way on social yet, pick one platform that's your favorite platform and just like crush that one and forget about everything else until you win that. Do you agree with that logic? And what would how would you add to that?
100%. I think that with anything, anything marketing related, anything, personal development related, you've got to figure out that one thing and go all in on it until you're an expert at it and you've mastered it and you've been able to create all kinds of amazing things for yourself from the personal development side. You've created opportunities through, attending personal development seminars and reading books and listening to podcasts like this one. And from the marketing perspective, absolutely going all in on YouTube or going all in on one platform. I mean, that isn't to say that you've got to forsake all of the other efforts that you're putting into your lead generation, for your business. But, if you're going to try to spread yourself out across, 4 or 5 Snapchat, Insta, TikTok, YouTube, like there's 4 right there. If you're going to try to spread yourself out across all 4 and try to speak 4 different languages, like you nailed it, right? These platforms all have a different language to them. Facebook is different from Instagram. Instagram is wildly different from Twitter, and Twitter, all the rest of them, like there just really isn't a conversation that really remotely matches what happens on YouTube. So they absolutely need to go all in on one platform, master it, become an expert at it, and then move on. On top of that, what I would suggest is if you can master it, then what you need to do is teach it to somebody else so that they can then manage that aspect of the business so that you can have the time to go on to the next thing and master the next thing. It's the whole, buy back your time principle, right? You're never going to be able to master 4 different platforms if you're not deploying some sort of, principle around that, buying back some of your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that this language of, a different language on every platform. I think when you were talking earlier about how brokers are just sort of blasting, they're not translating the language at all. They're just sort of blasting across all these platforms, and that just falls so hollow. Instagram, is a great example. But when we were talking before this conversation, I asked you, I said, well, what's the framework of how you talk to people? And you sent me back these 4 categories: marketing, systems, sales, and tech. So I want you to walk us through those 4 and give us, a little bit of what we should be thinking about for 2025 in each of those 4 categories.
Cool. So one of the things that, being in this business for 18 years, having coached, hundreds of agents since 2013, I identified 4 key areas that every single agent falls down in. Now, they're not falling down in all 4 categories. There's probably one that's worse than another, but essentially it's exactly what you said: marketing, sales, systems, and technology. I'll start with sales because I think sales is greatly overlooked. The whole idea around having a strategy on how to sell. I actually just had this conversation with a coaching client this morning. Most agents got into this business from something else that they were doing. They were dissatisfied with the job that they were already in. Like, how many conversations have you had, Matt, with agents? And your first question is, well, what did you do before real estate? Right. And everybody's got a story. Unless you're 22 years old and you're like, I was in university, which rarely happens. Right. You're going to get an answer like, oh, well, I worked in a front office. I worked in a bank. I worked in a factory, like whatever. Most people don't have that sales experience. They don't have the sales training. And so I think for 2025, developing or at least learning a system of sales, walking your prospect through a system, through a process on the phone to ultimately get to the fulfillment stage of that call, which is ultimately that meeting with that buyer or with that seller. You have to learn what that 9-step process is. You've got to learn the way to actually speak that language to effectively get that person to say yes to an appointment. So sales training, I think agents really need to focus on that. From a marketing perspective, we kind of already touched on this a little bit. I think social media, I've been formulating this thought in my mind the last probably couple of weeks. And the thought that popped into my head was blogging is dead. So I'll just throw that out there. Blogging is dead. Now, do I think it's completely dead? No. Do I think it's on life support? Yeah, 100%. We grew up with, in the real estate industry with Active Rain, right? Remember the blogging platform, Active Rain, right? There was a lot of agents that wound up pulling a lot of business from that platform and just by writing content on that platform. WordPress was really big in the mid to early 2000s, like 2010s, that sort of thing. I know people that are still trying to blog. They're actually trying to leverage AI to create the blog content for themselves. And what they don't realize is that they're hurting themselves more than they're helping themselves, especially with the last Google Core update that happened just this past March. So from a marketing perspective, focus on the things that you think are going to wind up getting you the best return on investment. And if social media is one of those things, you've got to commit to going all in on the social media. I would not commit to going all in on blogging because, again, I think it's on life support. What we need to do is think about blogging from a different perspective. Instagram Reels is a form of blogging. Twitter is a form of blogging. Facebook posts is a form of blogging. YouTube is a form of blogging. This is what I want people to really start to think about from their marketing. If you're going to start a blog, think bigger, think about the other platforms that are out there, and think about the attention economy that we are in right now. Most people are glued to their phones. They are watching, like, I'll watch my wife in the morning. I sit there, I read a book because it's part of my 5 daily non-negotiables. My wife will sit there, drink her coffee, and she'll scroll through her Instagram or scroll through her Facebook, and she watches reels. She watches video, right? So I would focus on the medium that you feel like your ideal client, your ICP is going to be consuming that content. So sales, marketing, systems. Every agent talks about wanting to create systems. Oh, I got to create a system for 2025. Great. What does that system look like? Like, do you even understand what a system is? Like, once we understand that the system should be designed to buy back a lot of your time, then great. Let's start to play. Instead of talking about a system, let's reframe it and start talking about playbooks instead. So if I've got a playbook for the way that I work with a seller, that's a process in which I get the property listed and I get it sold ultimately. So if we build out a playbook for that, we can then hire a monkey to come in and push buttons for us and make sure that that playbook is taken care of, right? So think about systems from a playbook perspective. And then lastly, technology. Again, a lot of people, a lot of agents, like, I wouldn't say if they have a hard time turning on their laptop, but my wife thinks I'm some sort of a genius when it comes to tech, and I'm not. I just know how to use the Google machine, right? And I keep trying to tell her this. I'm like, look, just type it into Google. It'll tell you everything that you want to know. Like, AI actually comes up on Google before anything else, and it will answer the question for you. So if you don't know how to do something on your laptop, just Google it, and AI will tell you. This is the other thing is ChatGPT. Like, I find myself not even using Google anymore. I go to ChatGPT and ask the question, right? So there's, technology is there's so much to talk about. There's apps, there's different web-based applications, there's different pieces of software. There's all kinds of stuff to talk about when it comes to technology. Like, I'm not going to sit down and show you how to build out a spreadsheet because I barely know how to do that myself, right? But when it comes to certain applications or certain pieces of software that I know can enhance or help you fulfill your business needs a lot quicker, then that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. What do you think? I've heard a couple good answers to this, but what do you think is if you had to point to one thing that, if agents could just make one change, and particularly a tech change in 2025, what would it be?
Well, 10 years ago, it was digital signatures, right? 10 years ago, it's like, look at how far we've come in 10 years, man. From a technology perspective, I think, I was doing this a long time ago, like video open houses. I tried doing that. There were certain apps that we could connect to our Facebook accounts. I remember doing video open houses, like live streaming an open house all the way back in 2011, 2012. I don't think that that's something that's going to be coming back, but I do think that the utilization of lives, injected into an agent's business at certain certain aspects of their business can be beneficial. Like if you were to do like an Ask Me Anything type of a call on every Friday on your Instagram or on your Facebook, and just open it up as a live, and you're going to answer questions not from the people that are typing them out and send them to you, but from the questions that you had from clients over the course of the past week. This is a question that I used to get all the time. I started doing a video blog in 2010. And I was creating a piece of content and posting it up into YouTube every single day. So I'd shoot 5 videos every Sunday. I'd set up my flip cam, and everything would be off the top of my head, and I would just shoot the content. Agents would ask me all the time, well, how did you come up with the content? And I'm like, dude, you're in real estate. Every day you should be able to get content every single day, right? Like this is a no-brainer. It's pretty easy to do. If you can't get content for your channel or for your blog or whatever it is that you're looking to do, then we got a problem. You're probably not listening too hard. Right?
Yeah. Well, and there's, that's the space in the last couple of years with, AI, and, we can all get in trouble with it. But if you just have a nugget of what you're trying to go after content wise, there's just, no end to what you can accomplish there. Is there any particular platform, AI specifically now, that you are addicted to?
ChatGPT is, yeah, I mean, that's the one for me. It's like, I've created my own GPTs on there, like for health, for fitness, for, for viral hooks, for reels and that sort of thing. Like I am on there every single day. The problem that I have with ChatGPT is being able to filter out all of the things that I've been searching for. So I find myself constantly scrolling through on the left-hand side of the screen, trying to find something that I'd searched for, did a search for like a week before, something like that. So, again, I mean, AI. I listened to this podcast the other day. It was the Modern Wisdom podcast with Chris Williamson, and he had this guy on there. His name was Mike Azratel, and so this guy's like a health and fitness dude. Towards the very end of the podcast, they were talking about AI and genomics and cybernetics, and it was just so interesting where he sees health going with the enhancement of artificial intelligence 10 years from now. Like the stuff that he was talking about was truly mind blowing. So you look at AI from a real estate perspective, like where do you see things going in 5 or 10 years? I get this question pops up in conversation all the time. Is AI going to replace the real estate agent? And the answer effectively is no. It's not going to replace the real estate agent. What it's going to do is the real estate agents that do not adopt AI into their business as a big part of their business planning or business plan or business moving forward in every aspect are going to wind up getting left behind, because AI can enhance, again, there's that word, right? It can enhance and push people further, farther, faster than just trying to do it on their own. And, coming back to the whole idea of playbooks, you're creating standard operating procedure around your entire business. AI can do all of that for you. And this is the other thing. People are like, well, I don't know what to tell it. Ask AI to give you the prompt for the AI to do the thing, right? It's that simple. It is that simple.
Yeah, that's right. And it's just getting smarter and smarter all the time. So one of the other things that you mentioned in the pre notes was this idea of, well, I call them either certainties or irreducible minimums. I can't remember what language you used, but sort of 5 musts. How did you message that?
Yeah. So it's the 5 daily non-negotiables. So this was something that was taught to me by my coach, like literally 90 some odd days ago. Okay. And I adopted this into my life, just over 90 days ago. And so there's 5 things that I do every single day. The first thing that I do is I read 10 pages of a book. So I get up early. I don't know how early you get up, Matt, but I'm usually out of bed by like 5 a.m. So the first thing I do is I get up, I grab a cup of coffee, I go and I sit down and I read my book. So I've been able to read like 3 books in the last 90 days. I've never read 3 books in 90 days in my entire life, right? So it's like, I've never really been a voracious reader. I'll listen to podcasts, I'll listen to audiobooks, that sort of thing, but I've never really sat down and like read like 2 books a month sort of thing, which is my goal for 2025. So the first thing that I do is I read 10 pages of book. The second thing that I do is I get in the gym and I work out for 45 minutes at a minimum and I break a sweat. And so I can either be in the gym, I can be on the side of a mountain doing a hike, or I can be out for a walk. It's got to be a minimum of 45 minutes. That's every single day. And there's no end to this. Like you don't go for 5 days and then take the weekend off. This is like 7 days a week, 365. Okay. So I read 10 pages of a book. I work out for 45 minutes. I review my goals on a daily basis. So what I've done is I looked out like 25 years from now, that'll put me at 75. So people can figure out my age today. They can do the math. So 25 years from now, I'm like, these are the things that I want to have accomplished by the time I'm 75 years old. I started to work those things backwards and realized that there were 9 core areas that I needed to focus on over the course of every single day of the week in order to be able to advance myself to complete those goals in the next 25 years. And so I took those 9 things and I put them into my notes app and then I screenshot it. And now it's a screensaver on my phone. So like, how many times do you look at your phone every single day? Like a couple hundred, right? So what I do is I force myself to review those goals every single time I open my phone. And so it just does something. It takes those things, it implants into your subconscious, and your subconscious winds up driving your conscious mind, right? So I review my goals daily. I post on social media a minimum of 3 times, a day. And my focus has been solely on Instagram. So if you go to my Instagram account, you'll see I've got going back 90 days, I've got a ton of reels on there now. I've got, all of my highlights. They've got a ton of stories in there. I've got lots of posts. So I've been posting there constantly. I've grown that channel. I had to pare it back. I got rid of like 1,300 followers on that channel. Most were like, they were bots, or they were people that I hadn't interacted with, or they were athletes or celebrities or whatever. I got rid of a bunch of people on there, went down to 1,000 and built it up almost to 1,300 over the course of the last 90 days. So I'm gaining a relatively okay following at the moment, but this has all been about repetition and consistency and posting content that I know is going to resonate with the people that are following me on that platform. So that's the 4th thing. The 5th thing is 5 daily opens. And so what this does is it forces me to reach out to a minimum of 5 people every single day. So it's either I'm in my email list, or I'm in my phone, or I'm on Instagram. If somebody follows me on Instagram, I immediately reach out. It's like, hey, Matt, how you doing? Thanks for following me here on Instagram. Appreciate your time and attention. Hey, I'm curious, are you here for the videos, or are you here to build your business? And I, throw some emojis and stuff in there. That gets the conversation going. And then I got to figure out, like, in a very short amount of time, if they're just there for the content. Okay, great. Which piece of content drew you to actually follow me? Oh, well, it was this video that you did on AI that's got 2,300 views on it. Oh, okay. So is AI an interest to you in your real estate business? Yes. Okay, great. Well, I've got this resource, whatever. So 5 opens. This is, it had a direct impact on my business. I booked one of the speaking engagements that I booked for early next year in February, came by way of reaching out to these people that are in my contact list. Like, the people that hold the keys to these conferences. I was able to reach out to one of these people and see if there was an opportunity for us to work together. They asked me to send over all of my information. I did that. She got back to me about a month later and said, okay, send over the contract. We're going to sign it. And that came just because I reached out, and it's, it's money in the bank and an opportunity for me to travel across the country, speak to over 1,000 agents over the course of 2 days, right? Deliver a really high level amount of value, and at the same time, be able to connect with as many of them as I possibly can, all while having a videographer there to capture the entire thing, right? So it's this whole, there's an elite growth model, and it's this infinity symbol, and it's on one side is social media, on the other side is stages. You use social media to get on stages, and then you use the stages, and you use social media to enhance the stages, which then the social media actually drives you towards more stages, and it just continues with this loop, right? And so you can take that. You don't have to be on stages. Like a podcast is a stage, right? Mm-hmm. A physical stage, obviously, at conferences, there's opportunities in that. If you're an agent listening to this and you're like, well, me getting on a stage, like, what benefit does that have to me? Well, let me tell you, before I was like actually speaking as part of my income, I would go to conferences and speak about video specifically and wind up generating income for myself by way of referrals from agents that were at these events. Right? I didn't have anything to sell. I was not a coach at the time. I was not selling a product. I had nothing to sell. All I had was my knowledge that I was willing to share, that I was willing to travel for and share. And they're just built a really great following and wound up being able to generate a pile of referrals from that over time.
Well, man, that is a packed ton of advice there in our 30-minute conversation. Man, I super appreciate it. I know that everybody that's hearing this is going to. How does everybody connect with you and learn more? I know you're an Instagram fan. Is that the best way?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And if you're okay with it, I know we talked about this kind of in the preamble, but I've got something to give to your listeners if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's 2 steps to this. What they need to do is go to Instagram, find me there at Kelley Skar. So that's KELLEYSKAR. Go and find me there. Follow me. Okay. So you got to follow me and then send me a DM. And the keyword is blueprint. And everything that I just talked about with the 5 daily non-negotiables, I put into a playbook so that it's easy to follow. And if you're interested, DM me blueprint and I'll send you over that playbook.
Awesome. Matt, Kelley, thank you so much for being on the Doorify Real Estate Podcast. And I know you're going to have an amazing 2025, but I hope you'll come back and check in with us soon.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time and appreciate your audience's attention today.
Right on. See you guys.